It's now time for Monster Soup, with your really fun at parties host, Dave Spencer, and his level-headed co-host, Brian McKinney. These dudes will explore all the crazy mysteries roaming off forest and deserted hallways. After all, monsters are real. It's Monster Soup time right now. Get it while it's hot. Now your hosts, Dave and Brian.
Hello. Welcome to Monster Soup, a kitchen of conversation with cryptids, misfits, and these kids. I'm David Spencer, your Golden Retriever host, and with me, as always, is Brian McKinney, or as we call him, the Goblin Gambino. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic. I see we got a guest this week.
We do have a guest, Jim Myers, sorry. So he is the proprietor. Can I go to the proprietor?
Sure. Sure.
The Sasquatch Outpost in Bailey, Colorado. So I'll tell you a funny story. This is me being an idiot. So my cousin went to your outpost, and this is how I found out about you. So I was just like, and she goes, "Oh my gosh, I went to this place." She took all these pictures and whatever, and she showed pictures of the place and everything. Oh, it's great. And then around Thanksgiving, we're talking about the podcast and everything with my uncles, and he goes, "Oh, you need to get that guy on the podcast who owns the thing." I was like, "That sounds awesome." I immediately got a little bit after Thanksgiving, I get online, I go to your outpost, I contact you, you're talking to me back, whatever. And then you had said one line that made me go, "How does he know we use StreamYard?" Then I go, "Oh wait, you also have a podcast on this network." I'm totally oblivious. I'm just an idiot. I was just like, "Oh, it'd be cool to get this guy on." The pictures you had were cool. I was like, "I'm sure he has some cool stories." I was totally unaware of your podcast on our Umbrella network, because we're like, what, is this the 14th episode, something like that?
14, 15, yeah.
Yeah. No worries at all.
So I said that,
like, oh my gosh.
I told Dave, I was like, "Hey, who are we having on this week?" I was off today, and I'm like, I want to do, do some digging, see if I can get some information on him. And so he sends me the information, and I was like, "This guy's on our network." And Dave's like, I thought Dave knew that. So then, like, we were texting like an hour ago or something, and he's like, "Did you know that Jim's on our network?" And I was like, "Yeah, I thought that's why you booked him on the show." Because
that's why I thought he booked me as well. So
I just thought it was these like fingers of like, I just thought, like everything's kind of connected. And I was just like, I literally contacted you because I saw my cousin went there in like a bunch of states, obviously Colorado. We're in Ohio.
What I think is cool is that without knowing I was on the network, you found me through somebody else anyway. So that's cool. Right. I like that.
You go. Yeah, it's just like the word's getting out, man. You're good to go. Yeah. So the biggest thing was that like I said, that you have the Sasquatch Outpost, and it's very cool, the pictures that they got. My cousin had a couple questions that she specifically wanted me to ask you. So right when you walk in, I don't know how much you want to talk about the thing, or you just want to kind of
whatever you
dig into it, whatever.
I'm good.
But he said the room, the thing of excrement, the case of excrement, of Bigfoot excrement, not just human excrement. It's actually
a tremendous turd. That's what.
She wants to know how you got all that.
So this was probably 4 years ago. We do a camp every summer called the Bigfoot Adventure Weekend here in Bailey, and I do it with a couple other guys who used to do it in Ohio at Salt Fork State Park, and they did it for like 10 years there every summer. And when they moved to Colorado and wanted to do the same thing, they approached me. And so anyway, we've been doing it for about, I think we've done 5 years now, but I think this was our first year. So we were looking for an area, easy driving distance from Bailey, where we could take everyone out, because part of our shtick with this weekend is we take people out 3 times in the woods, 2 times in the day and once at night. So we were out scouting around, and I come across this. So it's 48 inches long, this tremendous turd. And it was all in one line, and I found part of it in the grass, and I thought that's kind of strange. And then I kept finding more of it, and more of it, and more of it, and that's 4 feet of turd. And so, so I thought this is not bear scat. I knew this was not bear scat. It was not. The only thing it looked like is mountain lion scat, but there's no mountain lion that's got a colon that can produce 48 inches of scat. Yeah. So I went back to my store, got some gloves and some Ziploc bags, and took it back, and because I couldn't get it all in one bag, so I numbered the bags 1 through whatever, and just took pieces of it, so I knew what the order was to put it back together. And so we've had it in there since then, and still drawing attention. I can tell from your cousin.
Yeah, she was just like, well, she had some running theories about if it wasn't Bigfoot. This is stupid, but she drew me a picture of what she thought maybe it would have been. This will be just for us, because unless somebody's watching live, she put people in line.
Well, that's possible. That's possible.
I mean, we're not ruling anything out at this point.
If they'd have to squat and walk, and then the next one get in line and squat and walk, and I don't know that Sasquatch walks when they drop a deuce, but this was really strange looking turd. So.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, I mean, my dog does walk while she does it, but I don't know his. Yeah, I don't know his. Their whole jam of like going to the bathroom. I mean, it's a lot of hair, so I mean, maybe there's a lot.
But it is funny. It is funny to note what people come away from. Everybody comes away something different from the museum, and so for your cousin, it was the tremendous turd. Other people, there's one video or part of a video or our 7'3" animated animatronic Sasquatch. So, or the Sasquatch I painted in our bathroom. You walk in and you close the door, and on the back of the door, it says, "Ever get that feeling of being watched?" And I painted this Sasquatch on the wall, looking around a tree at them. And it's so funny how many people don't even see that. They'll go in, do what they're going to do and leave the restroom. And I'll ask them, "So did you see my Sasquatch in the restroom?" They're like, "See what?" I'm like, "It's huge on the wall." Huge. I'm like, "How can you not see that?"
Yeah, that's how they're so easily overlooked, in the wilderness.
Exactly. If you don't see it in the toilet on the wall.
This is a great litmus test for whether or not, or the fact that we haven't found Bigfoot yet. This is the reason why no one's looking around, no one's paying attention. Yeah, even when it's blatantly pictured.
People will go into the last part of our museum where we have our animatronic Sasquatch, and we call the boss, and there's a motion sensor. So when they cross that beam, he goes, and then he turns and he looks like this, and people will walk into that room and they're walking along the opposite wall, looking at stuff on that wall. So he's behind them, and they'll somehow cross that beam. And I'll be out in the store. This has happened numerous times when the first guest comes in, right? So they're by themselves in the museum. I'll hear the boss go, and then I hear somebody go, "Jesus Christ!" And they'll scream, they'll cuss, I've had people jump against the door. I hear boom, and I'm like, "Good grief, what are they doing in there?" But it so scares them because they didn't expect, and it's kind of in a diorama where it's it's trees and it's kind of dark and intentionally, and so people don't always. I mean, I walk in there and I'm like, "How can you not see him standing right there?" But they just don't. So then they get scared when he moves. Yeah. And they're all convinced that his eyes follow them. His eyes don't move. His eyes are fixed in his head. His head moves, but they're all convinced that he's watching them around the room. I don't dispute that because I want them to think that. But
yeah, it creates the mystery.
that would have been another couple grand to pull that one off. So
yeah,
if I can do it for free and they believe it, that's great.
yeah, you save so much money from them having a vivid imagination.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or just heavily traumatized.
And before we get in too deep with the Bigfoot stuff, I wanted you to give us some of your background, because I found your background is, I mean, I'm like, forget the Bigfoot stuff. We need to talk about this guy's life.
Yeah.
So start off with telling us where you grew up and kind of take it from there.
Well, I was born in Oklahoma. I lived for a few years in Oklahoma as a kid. Then we moved to Southern California, and then we moved to Kenya. My parents were missionaries, and so I was 11 when we moved to Kenya. And with my younger brother, well, 4 out of the 5 of us moved to Kenya. And my brother had just graduated from high school, and he hadn't started college yet. So he went just for fun, And but we were still in school. So and I remember people asking us before we left, well, what do you think about going to Africa? Aren't you worried? And I'm like, worried? Going to Africa? I mean, I'm a little 11-year-old boy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to Africa. Are you kidding me? So I didn't have any deep, lasting relationships at that point. So I'm sure I was glad to get away from my elementary school at that point. But anyway, so I spent the rest of my growing up years in Kenya till I graduated from boarding school in high school. Went back to the States, went through college, have a degree in fine arts and graphic design. Then went back overseas myself in the nonprofit world for the next 20 years. And so I've lived overseas for, 28 years, and in different places. I lived in Senegal and West Africa for 10 years. Then we moved to France, where we were based in France for 10 more years, but I was traveling all over North Africa and the Middle East as a crisis manager. Dealt with everything you can imagine: people being taken hostage, people being murdered for religious motivation, terrorist bombings of our facilities, you name it, it happened. And then had to negotiate for people's release from when they were being held. I've got 50 hours of training as a hostage negotiator. So yeah, not exactly
like the experience.
Yeah,
like you're like building your resume, how you're like the coolest person alive.
and then
You're the most interesting man in the world, that's for sure.
and then we moved back to the States, to Bailey, Colorado. And people say, so where did you move here from? And I say, France. And they're like, is there a town called France in Colorado?
Yeah.
No, the country of. And we actually have dual citizenship. We're fluent in French and conversational in a few other languages. But so, yeah, we've been in Bailey now since, 2009. So good while.
What made you go to Bailey as opposed to anywhere else?
We moved back. We moved back to the States when I was at a point of crisis. So too long a story to tell here, but I hit burnout in a spectacular way, and it wasn't the crisis part. That's what everyone assumes, that I couldn't take the crises. Actually, the crises were a welcome relief from being the director of operations for this organization and dealing with, finance and office management and
everything being on fire all the time.
IT and everything being on fire all the time, and personnel problems. And so, yeah, when a crisis would come, I'd say, see ya. And I'd be gone for, a day or days to deal with that. So I almost was tempted to create crises so I could get away from this.
I guess that's kind of like your wife, Brian. Like she just kind of thrives in that like kind of chaos.
Yeah.
But like doesn't like the office bureaucracy.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when you were growing up in Kenya, you were like right like in the safari, like you were out like
we lived in Nairobi and we went on safari constantly. I mean, there was a game reserve right outside of I can tell you a funny story if you have time for this.
Yeah, please.
So
this is your time. Let's go.
So we in fact, I don't think I've ever told this story even on my podcast. So
exclusive
story. So that's why they pay me the big bucks, David. So there was a game reserve. There still is right outside of Nairobi. It was 44 square miles and it was fenced on this Nairobi side, but not fenced on the backside. And so the animals, which is the case for most of the game reserves, they come and go as they want. So we would take all of our friends and family and guests and donors and whoever to this game reserve. And I had been there 1,000 times. And so I was probably 12 or 13 at that point. And my younger brother was with me on this particular day and my younger cousin, because my cousins had moved over to work with the same organization. And so there were a couple of places you could get out of your car. Most of the time you're not allowed out of your car because you'll get mauled by a lion or gored by a rhinoceros. And it would happen. People would come and think, oh, this is a nice animal park, and get out to take pictures. And the lion's like, lunch, you know. So we knew better than to get out, but there was one place where you could go see some hippos. There was a river and a trail kind of above the river along the edge of the cliff, and they had rangers there with guns, and the predators never came around there because there were too many people all the time walking around there. So we didn't want to go look at hippos. Who wants to look at hippos? They're just big fat things in the water, you know. It was so boring. So we ran to the very end of the trail where there was the river kind of had a big pool, and there was this huge acacia thorn tree kind of leaning over this pool, growing over this pool. And all these vervet monkeys were jumping around. So, you know, we're 10, 12, 13 in that range. So, of course, we pick up rocks and start throwing them at the monkeys. And by pure fluke, it had no skill at all. One of us I can't remember if we hit the monkey or made the monkey miss when he jumped, but he dropped into this pool. And he screamed once, and then crocodile that we never even knew was there. All we heard was, "Ee!" And then whoosh, and he was gone. The monkey was gone. And we're just sitting there looking down at this pool with our eyes like this, like, we just killed the monkey. We just committed monkeycide, you know. And so of course we pick up the rocks, start trying to throw them again, see if we can knock another monkey out.
I thought that story was going different.
But you know, having that monkey fall into the water, and then that crocodile, he was just down there, just as I'm sure his eyes alone, and he was like, oh please, oh please, oh please. Just waiting for days for one of those monkeys to fall. So we helped that crocodile out, but that monkey screamed once, and we didn't see him again. He was gone. And
you know, those monkeys have been taunting that crocodile. You know, he was waiting. You know,
they're like,
and I'm sure it had happened. I'm sure it had happened before, just by them slipping and falling into the water. But we accelerated that process. So that's what it was like for kids growing up in Africa. You know, I don't know politics. I don't know. You know, but we're just going to go throw rocks at monkeys. And,
that's fantastic. I really thought you were going to be like, I realized the plight of my guilt of like hitting a monkey.
I had guilt for about 3 seconds, and then it was gone.
You're like, oh my God.
Let's do it again.
I mean, there were thousands of monkeys out there. I'm like, yeah, nobody's going to miss a monkey. Trust me.
Yeah, I know he's gonna miss that one. He's
That
not
one
even
monkey.
named.
Yeah, over where we live, in the west side of Cleveland, Dave lives right by a park, and we're always like, "Oh, look, there's a deer in the front yard."
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you're like, "Hey, look, there's a lion and a hippo."
Yeah. Well, we used to camp in these game reserves, and we would have lions, elephants come through our camp at night. I remember we were staying in some bungalows that, kind of out by themselves, and there were a bunch of us kids all growing up together. And so we were outside playing around, and we ran to the edge. It was kind of lined by this little low wall, maybe 2 feet, 3 feet high, just kind of outlining the border of their property. And so we ran out, and we were just hanging out, and all of a sudden one of us shines our light out, and we get all these green eyes, and there was a whole pride of lions like 30 feet away watching us that we didn't even know were there. So we're like, okay, we're going to go back in the bungalows right now. And, running back to the bungalows, I just imagine these lions, and they didn't give it. They didn't care about us. They were fat and hungry and happy. And
yeah,
I'm sure they'd eaten.
Do you have like a sense of like, because I remember watching this video of like these kids, they grew up in Florida, and it was a video that they like their dad had built like a little like pontoon boat with like barrels and stuff, and he just has like a little excursion with his daughters. They're like fishing off the side, and the kids are like swimming, and there's crocodiles like 20 feet away, and the kids couldn't care no mind. They were just like, we're having fun, and the dad was like, make sure you stay out of the water. They were just having a time, and I'm just like, if that happened, my kids would be like, there are crocodiles over there. I'm not going in the water. Did you have like almost like a dangerous amount of desensitization?
where we went to high school, where we had boarding school, it was way hour and a half outside of Nairobi, and out in the bush basically, and there was a lake in the valley. It was on our school was on the edge of the Great Rift Valley, and so literally on the edge. And so we woke up every morning looking out over this incredible 40-mile wide valley with volcanoes in the middle. And so anyway, there was a lake out there, and where we would go fishing. But I had one friend that his family had a ski boat, old ski boat, outboard motor. So I learned to ski on this lake. So I'd be skiing, and I would fall. Of course I fall. I'm learning how to ski.
Yeah.
And so while I'm waiting, and there's hippos and crocodiles in this lake. So I fall, and the boat, he takes him a second to realize I've fallen. So he's taking this long turn, and something bumps my leg under the water.
Oh my God.
At that moment, if I could have walked on water, that boat could not have gotten back any fast. And he didn't know. So he's just turning slowly, gets back to him and like, I'm getting in.
Oh my gosh.
But it was probably a fish. But it didn't matter. There's crocodiles. Yeah. We had hippos chase the boat more than once when we would be fishing because we got too close to their herd.
And hippos are no joke. I mean, they'll kill you. Yeah.
They'll kill you in a heartbeat.
Aren't hippos like the only animal that will just kill you for fun? Am I wrong?
They don't kill you for fun, but what happens is people who go out at night get between a hippo that's grazing on the shore at night and the water, and the hippo is going to get back to that water no matter what, and they'll just run you over and kill you. But if you are in the water, if you're in a canoe or something, and you're too close to their, usually it's the bull hippos. If you're too close to their cows or their calves, they'll knock it over, and they got tusks. They got 3-foot long tusks in their mouth, and they can bite a crocodile right in half. And so they kill a lot of people who didn't realize that they were that close to a herd of hippos. That so we would be out walking. More than once I took a walking tour in South Africa, where my wife grew up, and we'd be standing on the edge of this river, and all you'd see is a wake coming towards the shore fast, and the ranger would be like, okay, we're out of here. Let's not wait for this hippo to hit the shore and come up.
It's always scary when like the person who's kind of in charge or like kind of knows the most is like, hey, let's go.
When the guy with the rifle says we're leaving,
Yeah.
I'm like,
you listen to
okay.
that guy.
Yeah, and I'm going to get to that when on some of the tours that you've been on, when you're the guy that's like, we're out of here.
Yeah.
But just when you think that Jim can't get any more interesting, Dave, you find out that he's a world-class train robber.
Wait, what? What does that mean? What does that mean? I'm assuming you're not outing his crimes. So what does that mean?
I don't know. Maybe I am.
Yeah.
So for about the last 10 years, one of my many hobbies is
robbing trains.
Old West reenacting. And one of the places we did that the most was at a place called the Georgetown Loop Railroad.
Yes.
And every summer for 4 weekends of summer, we would rob the trains, have a gunfight at the end with the lawman, and using blanks.
So cool.
And we would fill those blanks with as much gunpowder as we could get in them, and big noise, smoke, the more noise and smoke, the better. And we'd fire those blanks, and there'd be a foot-long flame that come out the end of the gun. And so, yeah, I've kind of semi-retired from that now, but someone else is carrying on in my place. But
are there people on the train?
Oh yeah. They get on. It's 4 weekends in the summer, 2 in June, 2 in August, and most people, not everyone, most people know when they're coming to the train that it's the Wild West weekend, and so there's going to be, and you have to. These days, you have to give people a paper that says there's going to be, train robberies and loud gunfire, and these are professionals, and they have to tell them, please don't touch their weapons. And every summer, we'd have people trying to pull our guns out of them. And these are real single action 45 revolvers, and we would have blanks in the guns because at the end of that ride, we had to have a shootout, and I remember. More than once, I would feel something, and I would turn around, and people would be passing my gun down the train car, and you come out of character real fast when that happens. Like,
wait, not children, but like
adults
with jobs.
Yes. Well, and many times they're from India or they don't understand how dangerous that is. They don't understand guns, and they're Europeans who they can't own guns. And so, people don't understand that, and which I get, but boy, you learn to get out of character and say, hey, give me that back. It's like,
come on, yeah. Wow.
I mean, you could kind of just stay in. I mean, you're robbing a train after all. You could,
we could, but we would, and we never, it was all impromptu, conversations with the people, because they would give the people fake money that printed by the train that we would steal back. And so really cool. I could have made a lot of money if we'd actually taken their money, but so they people would be hiding their money, and ladies would stick it down in their bra, and they'd look at us like, come get it, big boy. And we'd be like, ma'am, I'm going to get in trouble if I go after that money, but these days, all these kids get on the train with their jeans all ripped up. And so I would steal their money, and I would look down, and I'd say to the guy sitting next to the gal with the ripped jeans, is she with you? Yeah. And I'd hand in the money and say, go buy her some trousers, man. That's ridiculous.
Do you have improv? Did you do that like before this, or is it just
no? Well, I've always kind of been into acting and stuff, but this allowed me to pull out the stops. And
that sounds like
we would do rehearsals. We would perform in a lot of places where we would actually do a skit that we had rehearsed and everything. But so.
You are
professional train robber. We had to have insurance and all the deal.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
So nowadays, you with the Sasquatch Outpost, you guys do a lot of tours and things like that.
We do night hikes in and around Bailey. We'll do camping trips, and we do horseback, extreme squatching on horseback. So, meaning
is it a hotbed area or?
Well, people
where
ask
you're at?
that. It is a hotbed area, but I think if my store was located anywhere in the Rocky Mountains, we would have the same activity because I can go virtually anywhere and find the same signs that Sasquatch is around and have the same encounters. So, it's not just Bailey, but because people know that we're there now, if they are out and have something happen to them, they'll want to come tell us their story, and we'll go and do investigations occasionally. But no, we have a blast.
We were actually joking, me and Brian, before like the podcast or whatever. We were like joking about going to Cascade, which is like right by us. It's like a little park, and we were like, oh, it'd be funny to do that. And then we found out, like in the 90s, there was like a legitimate
the sighting.
The 80s, there was like a legitimate sighting there. We're like, we were joking. What are you talking about? And then we found out there was another one like the Metro Park that's like near us, and I was just like, how? Like I just assumed it would be more like even more rural than it.
Sure. Listen, they'll come in. They come into Bailey. People have sightings all the time in Bailey, and people are like, well, has anyone ever seen a Bigfoot around here? And I'm like, yeah, about 30 in the last 10 years, at least. That's just the people who told their story. Multiply that by 10, the numbers of people who never told anybody.
Yeah, they're afraid to talk about it, or just
they're afraid to talk about it, and that's why. I've heard people quote, "Well, yeah, there's 4,000, confirmed sightings in this country." And I'm like, 4,000. Call that 50,000, and then multiply that by 10, the number of people who never talked about it.
Yeah, never talked about it, or also just
there's hundreds of thousands of sightings across this country.
I mean, the one person that I ran into, they said that they didn't even like acknowledge it for 25 years. It was like traumatic, and it's like even to each other, like they were two people, and then they one day got together on like Thanksgiving, and they're like, hey, you want to talk about it? And it was so traumatic for them. Like they didn't talk about it for 25 years.
Well, we'll have people. Well, this happens all the time. We'll have couples come into the store, and it seems like it's always the husband. They'll walk up to the counter, and they'll say, sometimes they try to vet us, like wondering if we've really, they'll come up and they'll say, you don't really believe in this, do you? And I'm like, yes, I do. And then they look around, they're like, okay, I have a story I got to tell you. But they'll walk up as a couple, and the husband will he'll start telling me about this story that happened to him 20 years ago, and where he saw a Sasquatch or had something, and his wife's looking at him like, and he'll get done with the story, and she'll be like, what? You've never told me this story. And he goes, that's exactly why I never told you this story, because I figured you would just make fun of me. But it happened. I mean, all the time people will come in and their relatives, somebody will hear them telling me the story, and they're like, you never told me that story. And so, or they'll come in and they'll say, this happens all the time too. Yeah, my cousin says he's seen my brother, my best friend says he's seen a Sasquatch. And they start laughing. I say, oh, okay. Well, I get it, because your brother's probably a habitual liar, right? And they'll say, no, I didn't say that. I said, well, kind of you did, because you're saying you're whoever saw a Sasquatch and you don't believe them. And I'm like, and they'll be like, whoa, but they said they saw a Sasquatch. I said, well, do they lie to you all the time? No. Well, if they don't lie to you as a matter of habit, why don't you believe this time? Just because you don't think that's possible, and they're not habitual liars, then you need to take what they're saying with some serious consideration, because they wouldn't have told you this if it didn't really happen. Well, they saw a bear. I've heard that 1,000 times. Oh, they saw a bear. And the person who saw the Sasquatch will be like, don't you think I know what a bear looks like? Or they'll say, you saw a moose. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what a moose looks like or a bear. I've had moose come after us at night. There was never any question about what that was at night, even when you can hardly see it. I didn't. It definitely wasn't a Sasquatch. It was a moose. But it's just people. The way I describe it is people think they don't exist because they think they can't exist.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I constantly, I always kind of go into the conversation of like, I understand what I'm saying is silly, like, but like, let's just go on this little path with me. And there's no downside to believing this. Like, it's not gonna change your DNA. You're not gonna be you're not gonna be an idiot after this. It's just like, it's something, because the way I kind of absorbed it was like, oh, like, why not? Like, because our story is like, Brian has been into this since he was a kid. And I was just like, yeah, okay. Like, guy in a suit walking through the thing. And then like, I watched like a whole thing and I was like, oh, you know what? I'm on board now. Like, cause it was just, the evidence kind of started building up and I was like, this is actually very cool and very fun. And then, we went to the Bigfoot festival and then everybody's just telling me their stories. I mean, we sat down with the bartender and the bartender, we thought she was going to laugh us out of the bar. We were like, oh, what are you guys in town for?
Yeah.
What you guys in town for? We're like, oh, I'm waiting for her to be like, Bigfoot festival. And she goes, oh, and she had like 4 stories of like patrons that were there.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, we have these people and they come in. And then, and then we sat down with like all these people and they're, people would just come over and they're like, you talk about Bigfoot? And just like multitudes of stories with like different levels of interaction. And one guy said he was like 4 when he had one, but he like thought it was something else and it like came back to him of like being surrounded by them.
Or
and,
thought maybe he dreamed it, or as kids you have a very vivid imagination. But I've talked to multiple adults who had experiences as kids and only as adults started to seriously think about it and realize, no, I think that really happened. And they'll ask their sibling who they've never talked to about this. Do you remember when this and this happened? Yeah, I remember that. I'm like, oh my God, it was real, so.
Yeah. Like you like have to give yourself permission to kind of be oh, like this stuff's weird. I get it, but like it's fun, and or it's not fun. Some people it's not fun at all. Like it's like the scariest thing they've ever gone through. For me, it's fun.
I don't even preface anymore. I don't preface it with anything. I just say, people say, well, you don't really believe that. I'm like, yeah, I do 100%. And they'd look at me like, okay, And when we first built our store, this used to happen all the time. People would drive by and I'd see them, they would drive by and they would look and they wouldn't slow down. They would look and then they would keep driving. And I told my wife, this happened every single day, multiple times a day. People would, then they'd come around the block and they would drive by again. And I would say, they must think if they walk in here, I'm going to convert them to Squatchism or something.
Yeah.
They're going to become a Squatchist. And it's a whole other sub-religion of, like, I don't care what you think when you come in here. I mean, and we built the museum because people kept asking us the same questions over and over and over. And I thought, I'm sure we could build something that will try to answer these questions. Yeah. And then if it doesn't, then, we'll talk to them some more. But
when somebody comes up and they're like, do you really believe in this? And you're like, sir, I have a 4-foot turd over there on display. Of course I do.
Sasquatch dropped a turd for me. What are you talking about?
These were gathered.
I carried these with my.
I picked that turd up myself.
So actually, with that in mind, I have a second question for my cousin. She had a question about the braiding, the braids, and so I think I've heard a little bit about this, but not enough to like have any meat on the bone. Yeah, and I feel like that you would be able to expand on this a little more because I was just like, she was like, I don't understand how it works. Do they braid each other? Do they braid themselves? Is it a fashion statement? Like, so give me the cornucopia of the braiding.
I'd heard about this phenomenon, for several years from a couple of people who really went to the next level, wrote books about the horse braids. And, but there's a guy up in Wyoming named Don Monroe. He's written a book called The Braided Horses Are Coming, and it's just about horse braids. And so then I bought a horse with another guy, and we pastured him right literally across the road from my house in a big pasture. And I co-owned him for about a year till he put me in the hospital twice. But before that happened, we were at an event where they wanted some horses. It was, again, we were dressed as Old West characters. And so we brought two horses, my horse and his horse, got them out of the trailer, and we're starting to, put their tack on. And I notice he's got this braid, and a big braid on his mane. And he was a black horse, black mane. So you couldn't necessarily see it at first, but I've got that braid in the museum now. And it was two braids, two parts of the mane braided coming down to a single strand that was, the knots were so tight, starting where the two braids came together, I couldn't have gotten those out. I would have had to cut it off no matter what, because that was just braided so tightly. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, oh my God, I've been reading about this, hearing about this, and here my horse has a braid. Mm-hmm. So then I started looking at the other horses in his pasture, and there's one guy's braid, and that one has braids, and that one has braids. And nobody knew who was braiding these horses. They're all assuming that kids are coming. I'm like, okay, let's think about this logically. Kids are coming out here because it's not happening in the daytime. Kids are coming out here in the middle of the night, braiding the manes of horses they don't know and who don't know them. And that horse is just going to stand there. Hell no. Those horses are going to, one, at night, horses are very skittish to begin with, because this is territory where there's mountain lions and bears, and if it's not a person they know walking up to them, there's no way they're going to stand there and let their manes be braided. And so then I started checking with other people around the country. I have yet, even here in Colorado, there's another area out a little further out where there's a big corral that a bunch of people in that neighborhood in Bailey keep their horses. And one of the gals that I know well who keeps her horses there, I think she has two horses there. We were talking about the braids. I said, okay, I thought, I'm going to test this out. So I said, go next time you go to feed your horses or to groom them, see if they have braids or anybody else has braids. The next day I get a text. There's a picture of a braided mane. She goes, oh my God, I cannot believe it. And they found 4 or 5 horses with braided manes there in that corral. Anywhere where there's a corral where the horses are pastured out in the open at night, if they're bringing them in the stables, that's a different thing. But where they're out at night, their manes are braided. And I've yet to find a pasture or a corral where their horses are not braided. That's how common it is.
That's so weird.
I have 6 braids in the museum, real braids, and I've got pictures of half a dozen more. And I could, if I knew the owners of a lot of these horses, I would ask them if I could go cut the braids off, because these braids just hang on their horses. And I'm guessing nobody ever goes and grooms these poor horses, but these braids just hang on them to eventually, they'll grow out or whatever. But some of these braids, most of them hang down a foot below the mane, which means they're bringing tail hair or something else in, like extensions, and adding to the mane so that the actual braid is longer than the mane. And so,
oh my gosh,
or they'll braid in ribbons or the braid. And so I'm thinking, okay, it's not kids. There's no way this is kids. Mm-hmm. Okay. So who or what is braiding that? Then my business partner, Jill, who owns the horses we use in the summertime, she has 8 horses. All 6 out of the 8 have all had their manes braided. All right. So, anything from tiny little braids, I mean, tiny, I could never braid anything this small, to big big braids like you would do on a woman's hair. And the only horse that's not, there's 2 horses that have been braided. One, because he's scared to death of them. And see, the other horses on her property, the Sasquatch come on there so often, they don't care anymore. They don't even bother with them. So, but there's one horse that's terrified of them. And if they ever want to know where the Sasquatch are at night, they'll look for Storm and look where Storm is looking. And that's where the Sasquatch are. Or they have an Icelandic horse that has a mane that sticks straight up. It's short and it sticks straight up, and you can't braid it. It's just, it's not, it doesn't work. Those are the only 2 that haven't had their manes braided. And so everywhere, I'm telling you, every pasture, I'll drive by a pasture. If there's horses by the fence, I'll stop. I'll get out. I'll go look. 50% of the time, at least, they have braided manes.
That's
so
wild.
They're doing this all the time to horses all over the country. And people still haven't figured out this is Sasquatch. They'll call it witches braids, or and maybe it's not Sasquatch, but some of these horses are tall. It's not little people. I mean, these horses, you have to be standing like this to braid their manes. And so,
oh yeah, I mean, even just a regular person, they're
a regular person. So so we find bizarre. Them all the time. I mean, so much so that people are like, "This really happened?" I'm like, "Okay, do you know anybody that owns horses that are pastured? Go ask them." I mean, I know it's that common. Go ask them, and I'll bet you money that they have at least once or twice brought their horse in and their mane was braided, and they didn't know who braided it.
What's your running theory on why that happens? Like, do you have like a thought in your head of like, it's just like, I just like pretty things, like like a Sasquatch just be like, I like you look pretty.
Well, before I answer that question, the other question that comes to my mind is, okay, Sasquatch have long hair sometimes. Do they braid each other's hair?
Yeah.
If they're braiding horses' manes, why wouldn't they braid each other's hair? And there's some people who believe that Patty had a ponytail going down the back of her neck that was a braid. Unfortunately, because the footage isn't crystal clear, but I know Dave Pilates is convinced that she has a ponytail or a braid down the back of her head, down her neck. Yeah. But it stands to reason, if they're going to braid horses' manes, and I am convinced it's Sasquatch that does it, why would they not braid each other's hair? And so, because most footage we have of Sasquatch is at a distance, because that's just the only place people get video, you're never going to see those braids until you're close enough. And to be close enough to see the braids, you're really close. So, so my theory. Now, there are some people who've put out the theory. I don't think this is true, that they braid the horses' manes while they have their way with them. Now, that Sasquatch, you get these young juvenile Sasquatch, hot-blooded males. I can imagine them doing something like that, but the braids have to be done by younger juveniles, because I can't imagine an adult male being able to manipulate a mane to do some of the braids that we see. They're too tiny, and we even have flag. We have a flag that was braided. They rip flags and then braid the rips. And
really,
we have an American flag again that came from Nebraska, and Harriet McFeely, who owns a museum in Nebraska, a good friend of mine, she went to a ceremony. When they retire flags that are old or shredded, they burn them. There's a very solemn ceremony they go through. They had 100 flags. 13 of them have been ripped and braided.
Wow.
Braided, tiny little braids. And so we got one of her flags. It's in our museum, and it's braided. And I'm thinking, what person would rip a flag? And it's only American flags, it's not. I never see it with Colorado flags. Only American flags. Why that? I don't know. Or you know how people will have these like wind socks in the with the flag color.
Yeah.
They'll braid those too. They found those braided because they're already kind of have, you know, they're kind of shredded already the way they're made, and they'll braid those up. And again, what's the deal with the braids? I don't know, but why do they do what they do with trees? Why do they braid trees together? You know,
it might just be like a skill they have, and they're like, I'm just gonna show. I mean, there's not a lot to do in the woods. They don't have cable.
But they obviously don't care that people know that they know that we notice. They see that we notice. And that would be
so. Wouldn't that be the one thing they do actually like leave a trace of then? I mean, like, because as far as I know, besides like, you know, maybe it's fecal matter, you know, but like they don't leave a trace for anything else that I'm aware of outside of that.
Well, Doug Highcheck and I were playing around with the idea for a while for the sequel to Meldrum's movie Legend Meets Science, of getting a camera that we could put on a horse in a pasture where their manes are braided, and see if we could capture something on another horse as it's walking around, and see if, and he was never able to get me a camera, even though I think we figured out which kind of camera we would have to have, but that's got, you know, a long battery life. And it's just, how would you attach it? Because horses get down and roll around, and they would knock it off. So we couldn't quite figure out how to get one on a horse that would stay on the horse long enough to capture something, perhaps.
Yeah. Are we talking like big pastures? Like, I mean, like
huge. Yeah. Huge.
Yeah. So you could even like line the fence, because that would be like, you might as well be.
They'll see them there and they'll avoid them. I figured if we're going to fool them, and I don't think this would even fool them, to be honest, put him on a horse, but they are uncanny in their ability, their knowledge of cameras, and their ability to evade them. So
yeah, I mean, I've seen some of Doug's. We went to Doug's presentation, which is where kind of met him. But he like showed us just like all the different ways he like hides cameras, and he's just like, it's still I have nothing.
Yeah,
it's just wild that like he just has like, you know, like the peanut butter jar, and it's just like, I got a bear.
and I have friends, a fellow friend with Doug and I, who spent a month in the woods with 24 cameras, battery operated, and facing the woods, facing the camp, you know, not once. The only thing he got was eye glow once in the woods. And I've gotten that on video. They'll let you do that, but they're not going to walk in front of it. And so it's just uncanny. And people just think, how come there's not more video? Well, there's not more video because they're not going to let you do that. And so
I wonder if like, because, you know, the Patterson Gimlin film obviously being like the top tier of that footage, and then they like learned a thing or two about like, hey, that thing does a thing, so don't go in front of that anymore.
Well, here's my theory, David. I have a theory, and we're actually in negotiations with some producers to maybe do a show based on this concept. I have a theory that we're not going to get images of Sasquatch by going forward in technology, but we're going to have to go backwards in technology. We're going to have to go back to mechanical cameras, wind-up cameras, which is what they had. Okay. It was a 16 millimeter wind-up camera that caught Patty, because they're totally mechanical. There's nothing electronic. There's no infrared. There's nothing being emitted by that. It's just a mechanical apparatus. And I have a feeling if we go backwards in technology, and if we can figure out how to get a mechanical camera to start on cue, maybe we'll get more images like Patty. But
Well, you also have like the advantage of having all this like research and everything that you guys have at your disposal, as opposed to like what we've had in between there, which is just like, oh, it's just, a couple people like out there, but now you have like the actual, like, I know how to get this. I have the technology that really can help it, or the, I guess, anti-technology really.
Well, I have a friend who tried an experiment with starlight cameras, very expensive. They're not infrared. They draw light from the stars. And he had a camera trap where there was an old outhouse on this property. They put a bait on top of the outhouse. They had one camera looking at the outhouse and the other camera. All three cameras looked at the outhouse and each other. And the bait was there and then it was gone. And there was no interruption in video feed at all. The video feed stayed constant. The bait was there and then it was gone.
Yeah.
How do you explain that?
My favorite story from like Skinwalker Ranch was that same kind of story, but like one of the cameras got ripped apart, and they're like, "That's fine. We have cameras literally directed towards the cameras, so it's fine." And same exact thing happened. And this is like a crew of scientists specifically. Like this place was designed to catch things. Yeah, they're like literally the
high
footage
tech,
goes
expensive equipment.
Yeah. And it's just there and it's not. And they're like, where's the middle? Where's the middle part where this thing goes away and it just happens? And that's pretty common.
Which would tell you that whatever did that, ripped that camera, has higher technology than even our best scientists.
Yep. Yeah, because they can
evade it. They can elude it no matter what. I mean, Les Stroud has tried burying them, putting them in stuffed birds, everything, and never got an image of anything.
And that's not even like looting though. That's like editing real-time footage, like that's on
real time.
It's already on hard drive, like ready to go. And that's like going like it's gone now. And you're like,
it's gone.
How? Like, because we might even be thinking about this wrong, where we're going like, oh, these people, these are just like, but it was like, if you guys have seen Les Stroud's Survivor Man Bigfoot series, he was on top of this mountain in British Columbia. He and Todd standing, one of them, I think Todd stood on Les's shoulders, got, as high as two men, put an apple on top of this tree and had a infrared camera facing the apple all night. And it's there and then it's gone. And no change in footage. It's just there and then it's gone. And I'm like, and all you see is the tree shake slightly. And it's like, apple, no apple. And it's like, okay, how do they do it? How do they do it? I know
they're affecting our reality somehow. That even our technology, they can evade our technology. They can go in there whenever they want, take that apple, and we'll never see it.
You wonder if they just the technology just can't pick them up,
or their frequency is so. Yeah. But you don't even see the apple moving away from the tree. It's there, and then it's gone. And so,
and that's what makes it like hard to tell to people. But like, in any reality that like, if somebody has that footage, they're gonna be like, "Oh, here it is," because that's that's
everyone would know. We would all know. Yeah, if you saw Sasquatch climbing up that tree and man, that would be on the nightly news. Next thing
that's your Sizzler reel, and you're gonna build off of that forever. And like, so when you explain these things to like people like my wife or something who's just like, I'm not into this stuff, but you go like, oh, it was there, then it was gone. It was like, well, they added to the video, and you're like, no, like,
exactly. That's what,
yeah.
Well, I have people that say, well, I'm terrified of Sasquatch, so I don't go camping anymore. I said, okay, look. Go camping, buy a couple of game cams, put them on a tree and point them at your tent, and you'll have a completely quiet night. They will never come anywhere near you. Yeah. Now, this guy that went out with 24 cameras, nothing ever caught until the cameras batteries died, and he knew exactly at what moment they died. Then they would come and start whacking his tent, bam, bam, you know, and throwing rocks. As soon as the batteries died, everything started.
Yeah,
and he's like,
or
I don't know how I'm ever going to get this, you know.
yeah, or even like their ability. I mean, or something's ability to like completely drain your battery, having like 100%, and then that being like, oh, it's now dead. Like, hey, how do I have 2% battery? I literally came in here and looked at it a minute ago, and I had 100%.
Had it happen.
Yeah,
but if you're recording I've been able to catch stuff by recording in my tent, and so they'll touch the sides of the tent. I can get that on a camera, but how can you prove what's touching it? It could be a person. People say, that's just, you know, your friend that was out there doing that just so you have a video. No, it wasn't, but I can't prove that. And so you're never going to be able to prove what's going on outside that tent that's affecting your tent, because people will never believe you.
Yeah. I guess it just proves that like those instances prove that like this isn't for other people. This is for you.
It's for you.
It's like to shake you out of your reality, to go like, hey, be present. You don't need to pull out your phone to document this. Just
enjoy it. Just be there.
There's something bigger than you happening right now.
Right now.
You know, our immediate thing would be like, this is something I've never seen before. Here's my phone. You know, like, or here's my, you know, full camera, or here's my peanut butter jar that I masked. You know, they're just like, absolutely not. No, this person's not living in that moment, you know, whereas people like who just like have, you know, those people who have like that intuition feeling where they're like, something's off, something's here. I don't know why. So like they vibrate on that frequency of like, I don't, of the like ununderstandable part of our psyche and stuff like that. So,
well, I have friends that will go out at night in the woods alone and meditate and try to see if they can, and the Sasquatch will come to them. Now they have no camera, they have no recorder. It's just their mind and their experience. Sasquatch will come up to them. Sometimes they will. There's times when the Sasquatch is projecting fear into them. I mean, terror, and they'll have to say, "Please stop! Please stop! Don't do that!" And then it goes away. And I think the Sasquatch is just kind of testing them to see what's going to happen, but. They come to them because they know it's just them in the woods alone. And so, so I've started trying to do some of that. Doug tells me, don't do it, Jim. It's too dangerous. I'm like, okay, maybe it is. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. But
not a bad way to die, really. I mean, think about it. You know,
doing what I love. Yeah.
Yeah, you died as you lived, you know, like looking for this like bigger thing than you. You know, I know you do a lot of really cool things. You know, you've already told us a lot of them, but I also want to mention that you're coming out with an escape room, which I think is very cool. And you described it before we started as you want to scare the crap out of people, which I love. If you want to expand on that a little bit.
So the escape room, it's going to be 2 good-sized rooms. And then there's a kind of a waiting room, but all I'll tell you is the first room, when you enter in, is going to be the inside of a cabin. So you'll be entering into a cabin. And then if you get through that room, because obviously you have to solve the puzzles. If you get through that room, a door will open into the woods. And my goal, because it's usually going to be 3, 4, or 5 people doing this all together. My goal when that door opens is everybody looks out there and they look at each other and like, I'm not going out there. You go out there.
They're too scared.
I'm not going out there. Yeah. And everybody knows you're inside a building, but my goal is to make that so frightening by things that I'm not going to explain right now that nobody wants to go out that door. And so, but that's the goal. And there will be a twist in the end, which I won't reveal yet, but, because I have very strong, views about the way I believe Sasquatch is, and it's not the way they're portrayed in 99% of the bloodbath movies that they make about Sasquatch, and where teenagers go out to have sex at the remote cabin in the woods and they all get cannibalized. And but I'm not opposed to taking advantage of that fear until a certain point in the event. And so I'll capitalize on that because it's easy to do because everybody's terrified of them. So
they don't have to know the real thing. We can dig into that later. That's around the campfire stories.
Sure.
If you want to have a payable experience, you want to be a little more frightened.
Yeah.
You don't want to leave and be like, how was it?
You want to pay to be afraid. Yes.
Yeah. You don't want people to leave and be like, how was it? Be like, heartwarming.
Yeah. You go on roller coasters, people are like, how was it? Oh my God, it was incredible.
Like the scarier the better. Yeah.
That's why they build them. They want you to have that reaction. So
yeah. It's fantastic. Well, this has been fantastic. I love every part of this. Again, I apologize that I didn't know that you were on our network.
That's okay. Don't worry, David.
But yeah, this has been more than actually. I find it funnier that we connected, even though you were in the next room, kind of, metaphorically. It's like, oh, have you heard about Jim? I'm like, oh yeah, hey. Contacting you, and you're like, I'm right.
No,
here.
I agree.
Just like one of those like.
It happened because it was supposed to happen. So
it was supposed to happen. You know what? I love that. Actually, I'm working on something right now where I did it. I had a project and it fell through. But I learned this thing from it, and at my work, they're like, "Can you do this thing?" And I was like, "Actually, I learned this thing just recently." And I was just like, "Sometimes the universe just gives you tools that you're unaware of at the time, and they bring them back to you." However you want to believe that circles. I feel like everything's just around. It's just a perpetual time loop, and
Brian was already in the know. You weren't. And it somehow worked out. So
listen, I'm just a personality hire. That's all I'm not good at anything else. I'm here to be excited about your stories and think they're cool. Awesome. Expand as much as I can. Everything about if I make it out to Colorado, which I adore, so I can't imagine why I won't. Absolutely hitting up the Sasquatch Outpost. So it's the Sasquatch Outpost in Bailey, Colorado. And then do you have a name for your pen? Your escape room yet? Or
it's going to be called Deep Woods.
Love that. Okay, so if you want to get scared, but also, if you know a little bit about Sasquatch, it's not real. It's not true. But if you want to have a good time with some friends, it's going to be also in Bailey, Colorado.
It will be above my store and museum on the second floor. Oh, so
wait,
everything's going to be in the same building. So.
Brian, he's going to be like the Casa Noel person at in Medina. There's this guy who has a indoor like alien mini golf place, and then connected to it, it's this place called Casa Noel. And by the way, he looks like Santa Claus. He has like the suit from the Grinch, like a piece of the Christmas Vacation van, I think.
Wow. He's got like Cousin Eddie's van, and or the camper.
Yeah, we want to be the Casa Bonita of
Casa Bonita. I love that.
Without the food. Without the food.
Yeah.
And then all that aside, you get to talk to the most interesting man in the world,
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, you don't even have to go there for Sasquatch things. You can just be like, hey, what was it like encountering an entire crocodile? Or you can ask about the monkeys and do all the things. So, but yeah, this is fantastic. I absolutely love talking to you. I'm so glad I reached out. My dog is bugging me now again. Hi.
No worries.
But this has been fantastic. If anybody who's out there, unluckily this is a pre-record, so like I love talking to people and stuff like that. But feel free to jump in the chats and stuff. But join us on Facebook at Monster Soup Podcast. All that stuff. And then if you have any fun stories you want to come on the show and talk about them, Monster Soup Podcast at gmail.com. And again, Jim, you killed it. Thank you for the stories. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
I appreciate all of this. Yeah. This was incredibly interesting. All right,
Great
man.
to meet you.
Well,
thanks for having me on the show.
Bye, everybody.